So In the Valley is a very blues-oriented tune. It's just, you're really just playing with 1-4-5 chords. But the thing about it is that it's played in a style that allows you to essentially accompany yourself. So there's bass lines, there's rhythm, there's really strong backbeat going on, and there's comping of chords. So you're trying to take a rhythm section, drummer and a bass player, and a keyboardist or guitar player, and put them all together into one instrument. So I'm going to break down how you can go about doing something like this, not only for that song, but for other songs that you might play by yourself or that you might play with a vocalist. I'm approaching it more from like a rock and roll perspective. So backbeat is like the big thing. The first thing you want to do is you want to play and have a percussive backbeat that keeps the rhythm the whole time you're doing it. So one of the ways to do it is to, obviously your thumb's going to be playing the bass lines, and then you're going to be using your index finger or your index and middle finger, index, middle, and ring fingers, and you're just going to be hitting on the 2 and the 4. And that's your snare drum. So just go listen to a bunch of rock records and get into the backbeat, and that's it. And you can start by just alternating a bass line, going back and forth between the root and the fifth. So it's 1, 2, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. If I go to the F sharp, it's very country right now. So that's the beginning. So that's what you want to practice in the very beginning. You want to practice being able to do something like that. Taking the bass line and probably just going 1-5 and hitting the backbeat. So once you've practiced this 1-5 for a while, you notice too, one of the things that I'm doing is I'm muting all the strings. So when I do a percussive bit, it kind of emulates a snare drum. And you can do that a couple ways. You can either mute with your left hand, just by laying your fingers across the strings. One of the things you can do is you can lift up your finger after you hit a note. So I'm lifting it up after when it comes to that backbeat. That really helps that backbeat come out. So you do this, and then you start working on creating a bass line. So in a song like In the Valley, the bass line is actually moving around a lot. I would say it's influenced a bit from like a Motown feel, where the bass line is front and center. It's almost like a melodic counterpoint to what the vocals are doing. So you start working on a bass line, and so you might start connecting the 1 and the 5. So we go 1, 5, 1, 5. So 5, and then we 1. So that's the next step, and you can approach it a variety of ways. You hear I didn't hit the backbeat on that connecting note, but you can practice where you can hit that bass note and get a percussive feel at the same time, and it sounds like this. So you can kind of play around with it, and that's a very good trick to have in your repertoire, because then you can bring it out or throw it in depending on what you want. So here it is slowed down. So I'm muting. Essentially what I'm doing is when I'm coming down on that connecting note, I'm muting the other strings. Get a little bit of noise in there, but when you speed it up, it doesn't matter that much. It's very good for country music too. And so for In the Valley, what I'm doing is I'm hitting the bass note on 1, I'm hitting the backbeat on 2, and then I'm doing 3 and 4. Those are all bass notes. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I work into filling in the spaces in between 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so that's when you think more of like, what might a keyboardist play? Or go pull out some Bob Marley records and listen to how they fill the and space in between those beats. Without any chords, I'm just going to do it with rhythm. So here's what I was playing before. There's sound on 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I fill in the space in between. For that example, I was just muting the upper strings, and I'm using my index, middle, and ring finger to kind of create this hook. So it's all about thumb, and then these guys are pretty much moving as a unit. Then you can start putting in chord shapes, and those chord shapes you can either play out like that, or you can kind of play and mute, or you can mute them. They're really just there to help fill up space. So In the Valley is in C sharp, and you don't, I think as a guitar player, play too much in C sharp minor, but one of the reasons I'm playing in C sharp minor for this tune is that I have this open E string. Whenever you're playing by yourself on guitar, if you're playing by yourself and you're accompanying a vocalist, you really want to think about how you can use the open strings to make your job a lot easier. So in this case, in C sharp minor, I get to use this open E string on both the C sharp chords and the F sharp dominant chords. So it just stays there. So then I have these chord shapes in my right hand that are based all on the top 3 strings, and I don't have to move them very much. That's also very important when you're playing this style by yourself. So here's the C sharp chord shape. And then we have an F sharp dominant, and this is that shape. So really very economical motion. And then we have a G sharp dominant, and that's this shape right here. So not a lot of movement. So that's important. That allows most of the movement to occur in the bass line. So I throw them all together, this is what you get. In that, when I do the comping, sometimes I would do the full chords, or sometimes I would just do the mute. And then when you have the different variations in your repertoire, you can pull them out to make it sound more one way or more the other, or just throw it in for variation. So one way is with just a backbeat on 2. So one way is just a way I showed you with just a backbeat on 2. Or you could do one with has a backbeat on 2 and 4. I actually do that in the B section of that song. When it goes to the F sharp dominant, I switch from playing just the backbeat on 2 to playing the backbeat on 1, on 2, and 4. So that's this.